EV versus hybrid over 5 years. Which one actually costs less to own? Not which has cooler tech or which one gets more likes. Over 5 years of real life, payments, fuel or electricity, maintenance, repairs, insurance, and resale, which one quietly takes less money out of your pocket? Because this is where a lot of people get played. You hear, EVs are so cheap to run, you'll save a fortune. Or, hybrids are the sweet spot, no charging headaches, still great miles per gallon. And then you see someone who bought the right thing still bleeding cash because they only looked at the fuel economy number and the monthly payment. I'm GearHead. I don't care what camp you're in, EV, hybrid, gas, diesel. I care about what survives, what breaks, and what quietly empties your bank account over time. And if you like the way I break this down and you want more than what a YouTube video can give you, I've got something built exactly for you. I run a members-only space where we go deep on this stuff. You bring your real situation. Here are my miles, here are my local gas and electricity prices, here are the cars I'm looking at, and I help you think like a mechanic and an engineer step by step. We do live Q&A and diagnostics like, is this hybrid a good deal? Will this EV make sense for 7 years? And I walk you through the math instead of you guessing. Members get early access to my most detailed breakdowns, tools, spreadsheets, and checklists before they ever become public. And the vibe is simple. No flexing, no fanboy wars, just people who want to be dangerously smart about cars. I'm not begging you to join. If you're the kind of person who knows one smart car decision can be worth thousands, you'll see the value instantly. If not, keep watching. You'll still learn a lot for free. Let's answer the big question. EV versus hybrid, which actually wins the 5-year total cost of ownership? First, total cost of ownership is not just EVs are cheap to fuel or hybrids get 50 miles per gallon. Over 5 years, you care about purchase price and interest if you finance, incentives and tax credits, fuel or electricity, insurance, routine maintenance, repairs, taxes and registration, and resale, meaning what it's worth when you sell or trade. You only know which one wins when you look at all of that together. Let's build a realistic example so you can see how this works. Then you can plug in your own numbers. Say you're cross-shopping a mainstream compact or mid-size EV, like a Model 3 RWD, Kona EV, or Bolt EUV, and a mainstream full hybrid, like a Corolla hybrid, Prius, or Ioniq and Elantra hybrid. Here are our assumptions, and you can swap these for your real life later. 15,000 miles per year, gasoline at $4 a gallon, home electricity at 15 cents per kilowatt hour, you can install a level 2 charger at home, you keep the car 5 years, and you buy, not lease. Purchase price and incentives. Right now, in a lot of markets, a hybrid is, say, $30,000 out the door. An EV is, say, $40,000 out the door before incentives. If you qualify for, say, a $7,500 EV tax credit and a small local rebate, your effective EV cost might drop to around $32,500. The hybrid might have a small rebate or nothing. So, roughly, the hybrid is $30,000 and the EV after incentives is $32,500, already closer than list prices suggest. If you finance both over 5 years at, say, 5% APR, your rough monthly payments are in this ballpark. The hybrid at $30,000 is about $566 a month. The EV at $32,500 is about $613 a month. The difference is around $47 a month, or about $560 a year more for the EV. That's just the payment. Now fuel versus electricity. For hybrid fuel use, assume 50 miles per gallon average over your real driving. Plenty of modern hybrids can hit that. 15,000 miles divided by 50 miles per gallon equals 300 gallons a year. 300 gallons times $4 equals $1,200 a year. Over 5 years, that's $6,000 in gas. For EV electricity use, assume 28 kilowatt-hours per 100 miles, or 0.28 kilowatt-hours per mile. This is reasonable for a compact or mid-size EV. 15,000 miles times 0.28 equals 4,200 kilowatt-hours a year. 4,200 kilowatt-hours times 15 cents equals $630 a year. Over 5 years, that's $3,150 in electricity. So, hybrid fuel over 5 years is $6,000, EV electricity over 5 years is $3,150. The EV saves you about $2,850 in fuel over 5 years, which is around $570 a year. Remember, the EV payment was about $560 a year more. Interesting how close that is. In this example, fuel savings almost cancel out the higher payment. But you also need a home charger. For a home Level 2 charger, hardware is maybe $400 to $800. The install can be $300 to $2,000 depending on your panel and distance. Let's ballpark it at $1,200 total for hardware and install. Spread over 5 years, that's about $240 a year. So the net energy advantage for the EV is the fuel savings of about $570 a year minus the charger cost of about $240 a year. That leaves roughly $330 a year net in favor of the EV on fuel after you pay for the charger. Over 5 years, that's about $1,650 saved by the EV on energy. Now, net those against the payments. The extra you paid in EV payments over 5 years is 5 times $560, which is $2,800. What you recovered via energy savings is about $1,650. The EV is still around $1,150 more expensive than the hybrid over 5 years on purchase plus energy in this scenario. But we're not done. Maintenance and repairs. Routine maintenance for the hybrid over 5 years and 75,000 miles realistically looks like this. Oil changes, say 3 a year at $75 times 5 years, is about $1,125. Engine air filter and cabin air filter changes are maybe $200 total. Coolant service is possibly once in 5 years at about $200. Brake fluid once is about $150. Transmission or hybrid transaxle fluid is maybe one $200 service. And light brake work, if needed, maybe just one axle, is about $400. So, ballpark, that's around $2,000 to $2,300 in routine maintenance and mild wear items.
Routine maintenance for the EV looks like this. No oil changes, no traditional transmission services, maybe one reduction gear oil change way out in the future, but probably beyond 5 years for many. Cabin air filters are about $200 total over 5 years. Brake fluid is one change at about $150. For brakes, regen does most of the work, so likely minimal pad and rotor work in just 5 years. Ballpark, that's around $400 to $700 in routine maintenance. Let's split the difference and say the hybrid is $2,200 over 5 years and the EV is $700 over 5 years. The EV saves you roughly $1,500 in maintenance in this time frame. Add that back into the total. Earlier, the hybrid was ahead by about $1,150 on purchase plus energy. The EV now claws back about $1,500 on maintenance. Net, the EV is about $350 cheaper than the hybrid in this example so far. Now, insurance. Right now, EVs often cost a bit more to insure because of more expensive components, newer tech, and fewer shops fully comfortable repairing them. Say, for example, hybrid insurance is $1,200 a year and EV insurance is $1,400 a year. The difference is $200 a year. Over 5 years, the EV costs about $1,000 more in insurance. So now the EV was ahead by about $350, subtract $1,000 extra for insurance, and the hybrid is now about $650 cheaper over 5 years in this specific example. But notice how small that is compared to the total you're spending. Over 5 years, you're probably spending $30,000 plus in payments, $3,000 to $6,000 in fuel or electricity, a few thousand in maintenance and insurance, and losing $15,000 to $16,500 in depreciation. A $2,000 difference over 5 years is about $400 a year. That's $33 a month. Change any of the assumptions and the result can easily flip. If gas is $5 a gallon instead of $4, the EV looks better. If your electricity is 25 cents a kilowatt hour instead of 15 cents, the hybrid looks better. If your EV qualifies for bigger incentives, the EV looks better. If your hybrid needs an out-of-warranty repair and your EV doesn't, the EV wins. If the EV's resale value holds better than we guessed, the EV wins. The point is, in many realistic scenarios, EV and hybrid 5-year total cost of ownership are surprisingly close. So what actually makes the right choice for you? 4 big things. First, your driving pattern. If a lot of your 15,000 miles a year happens in city streets, short trips, and stop-and-go commuting, an EV is in its element, especially if you charge at home overnight. If most of your miles are long highway stretches, rural drives, and places where you can't easily charge at home, a hybrid or even a very efficient gas car may be the more convenient and cost-effective option. Second, your local prices and incentives. For electricity versus gas, if your electricity is cheap and gas is painful, the EV's energy advantage grows. If electricity is expensive and gas is moderate, the EV's edge shrinks or disappears. For incentives and fees, if your area has strong EV incentives, bus lane perks, cheap EV tolls, or taxes combustion more heavily, the EV wins. If incentives are weak and EVs get no special treatment, the math is closer. Third, your tolerance for tech risk and hassle. Hybrids from the right brands, Toyota and Lexus especially, are battle-tested as daily appliances. Their long-term behavior at 150,000 to 200,000 miles is well documented. EVs are simpler mechanically in some ways, no oil changes, no exhaust, no transmission, but long-term battery aging and market perception are still evolving. 5 years is fine. 10+ years is where the unknowns begin. Also, consider fast charging on road trips. If you hate the idea of planning trips around a charger, even if the math works, a hybrid might simply match your temperament better. Fourth, non-financial things that still matter. Noise and smoothness. EVs are dead quiet and buttery smooth. That can absolutely change how nice a car feels to live with. Garage and parking situation, if you can't always charge at home, an EV is less compelling. Local restrictions, some cities are starting to favor EVs and penalize everything else. 5 years from now, that might matter to you. So, is an EV always cheaper than a hybrid over 5 years? No. Is a hybrid always safer and cheaper? Also no. The honest answer is that for a lot of people with typical commutes and access to home charging, the 5-year total cost of an EV and a similar hybrid ends up in the same ballpark, a few thousand different either way depending on how the details shake out. That's close enough that your decision should be based on how you actually drive, how you feel about charging versus filling up, how much you value quiet and refinement, and what kind of future regulations your city or country is likely to push. If you want me to walk through this with your real numbers, not a generic example, that's the exact kind of thing we do in the membership I mentioned earlier. We take your commute, your local utility and gas rates, and your specific car options, and we build a real 5-year model for you, not for some imaginary average driver. If that sounds like overkill, remember, one bad car decision can easily cost you $5,000 to $10,000 more than it had to. Spending a bit of time to get the decision right is one of the highest leverage moves you can make with your money. If you're not ready for that yet, no problem. Just make sure you're subscribed here, because this is what I do. Not just which is better, but how does this choice actually play out over years of your life and thousands of your dollars. I'm GearHead. Every car and every drivetrain choice has a story, and together we're going to decode all of them so your next 5-year story is one you're glad you paid for.